Or to this computer. Okay, share screen. Okay, so we can start. If you have Docker desktop installed, I guess I don't have it running. Yeah, sorry for that. No, I don't want to install. I think I rebooted my computer, so it doesn't start. And this, so you should have seen this icon, right? And it's actually a very clumsy tool. I say it's always up. Its updates cause problems for me. I don't particularly enjoy working with the Docker desktop, but anyway, and if you use Windows or Linux, Mac, then it just gives you an isolated virtual machine. In Linux, the picture is different because Docker is somewhat native to Linux. You don't have to do well. There is, first of all, there is no such thing called Docker for desktop for Linux, as far as I know. And well, it's a different setup. But we'll stick to a little bit more Windows or Mac geared development here, and I assume this is running. So I'm in a workshop folder. What I will do is I will create a very creative project name called my project. Okay. So I go here and I'll just run code dot, which should fire up VS Code. Then, assuming you have a Docker extension here installed, if you haven't done, you can just do it right away, which is very trivial. Then you should have some dev container commands. Come on, pull it here. Dev container. Do you see that? Has anyone any problem with this? So you can try a few options. We can try new dev container or reopening container. So let's try doing new reopening container. Then it asks you what dev container you want to use. And for our particular purpose, since this is going to be an F#, actually a .NET application, so we are just going to stick to the C# template, C# dev containers, okay? And then we'll just select that. As you see, currently, since .NET 8 isn't there, you will be only able to select up to .NET 7. But once .NET 8 is released, briefly, the dev container image will be available for .NET 8. And right now, the only way, if you want to use .NET 8 with the dev container, the only way to do it is to build your own container Docker file from scratch, which is not so trivial if you ask me. So I'll just briefly talk about .NET 8, what would be the difference. But for this demo, we'll stick to .NET 7, sorry. And so we'll just select the default one. So typically it asks what other features we want to do. And I would prefer installing Git, for example. Yeah, Git from source. And what else? I would prefer to have PowerShell, if you like it, which is optional. And a Node. In this case, I'd like to get with this via NVM. Because NVM, as you might know, it's the node version manager, which allows you to switch between different nodes. So I select the tree, I go OK, keep defaults. And you can see something is coming up.
How did you start what was the initial command to run?
Once you open the folder, what I did was, so I selected dev container. And then I just said, well, what you see is reopen in container. So right now we don't see it, but because It's already open in container.
I don't get the dev containers.
Do you have the extension? Sorry, I also misphrased it. So the extension name is dev containers, not the Docker.
Okay, yeah, that's maybe the problem.
It's my bad. I was confused. So you have to have this dev container extension, and once you do that, you will you in the command palette you would have to you should see these dev containers. Okay, so once you do this, everything is installed. So this C# template is just works for us, and what you end up is this file. Okay, a dev container JSON file, which is a special file, and it actually, you can see it loads it finds the relevant .NET image, and as you would remember, we have selected three features, right? Which is one was the Git, one was the Node, and one was the PowerShell. Okay. So once you do that, you can open a terminal here, and well, you can just run that. Now we are, so my machine is a macOS machine, a MacBook, but now I'm on Linux environment. It's a virtual machine. So if I want to switch to, for example, for whatever reason, to open the same thing in local non-containerized environment, I use this reopen folder locally. Okay, and now I am in this folder again. Okay, so this is the local version. This is now in my native machine. So once you open this, you will see that this blue icon comes up, and it all says that, well, do you want to reopen its container? So if I do that, then it will reopen the container. Okay, and the second time will be faster because it will use the cached image. However, if you make a change in this file, you will see we'll briefly discuss what else we can do here. You will always need to rebuild the container. So then you will say, yeah, and sometimes it just says rebuild and reopen. Rebuild container. Okay, that rebuilds this thing. So this is the something like a Docker file. It's not a Docker file for you. You can use Docker file or Docker Compose file even for with dev containers. There are some nice URLs here. You can just visit it. You can just say, well, like that. So there's a specification here. There are a lot of commands. You can just read it, or you can just Google for dev containers, VS Code, and there's a nice documentation about it, creating a dev container with VS Code. So it talks about the things we are going to discuss. You can also go through this. It's somewhat similar. And it also covers things like which we are not kind of using an existing Docker Compose file, which for multiple things, etc. So once we do that, what we can do is we can just a little bit more tune our dev container file. Well, you can just give any name. You can just say my project or whatever you like to do. So once I change the file, you see that it immediately popped up that there's something I need to rebuild. Okay. So another thing is what we would like to do is, for example, let's assume we are going to develop an ASP.NET application. That's our intention. Because this is running in a virtual machine, we need to forward the ports. And then you can just undo this, okay? And you need to open the comma here. And also you can uncomment this part as well, okay? So what these lines do is that I'm stating that, well, if I'm going to run something by default, ASP.NET uses these two ports. I would like this to be exposed to the host app as well. Okay. And another thing you will want to do is to add extensions. So for example, we can, I'll just copy paste some code here and just share with you. We can modify the customization section. You can see here, as in like this. And for people who doesn't want to type this, I'll just share the relevant code repo. You can also follow it from this file. You can see the chat in the chat window. I posted the relevant code here. So basically, these are the extensions that you would want to run under VS Code when you want to. I mean, there are some personal ones, but in particular, what need is the ionide, right? The mechanic. Well, what I like is this one. These two are much relevant with F# at all.
These are like VS Code extensions, names?
Yeah, they are VS Code extension names. Essentially, that's that. Okay. And another thing is, let's say, again, we plan an ASP.NET environment here, okay? And we want to use, and we can just pass some parameters to as an environment variable. For example, well, here I just use, actually, I like to use this ports instead, 5,000. The reason is that, for example, let's say you create a lot of projects. What I do as a strategy is I always increment this. For example, if this is my fourth project, I use a 50-40. Then in next project, I use 50-50, something like that. Then I increment this constantly. So if this were my fourth project, then I stick to this schema. Okay. And there are two items I specified. One is if you pass this environment variable, the ASP.NET will by default pick it up and start using the development mode. This is what I want. And also, depending on if you want HTTPS to work, you can use something like that, pass 2 URLs. Though if you do so, you need to also pass the adjust the certificate file. So to do so, you need to go to your machine. I'm not going to cover this in your workshop, but maybe in the next one. That you need to create a certificate in your local machine, not inside Docker, and then mount it, okay? And once you mount it, then you can just pass this path. So this is a little bit out of the scope for this workshop. Basically, I'm only caring about two things. I mean, I'm not going to run in ASP.NET in this workshop, just two items. And basically, that will be a start. So once you have done all of these things, I go here, again, comma, and then rebuild container. Sometimes you might have an error message stating that, hey, I was not able to install ionide. And this is due to sometimes a race condition. Don't worry about it. Just reload your IDE. I mean, and that will be fine. So you can see the extensions are installed, actually. At least I can see this one, right? And we are still good. Any questions so far?
Yeah, well, wondering, in my VS instance, it says sometimes like connecting to remote or something, but everything is running locally and just in containers, right?
Yeah,
it's
so basically your VS
address
Code still runs in your machine, and there's some sort of server running inside the Docker container, and your VS Code is actually connecting to that server.
Mm-hmm. And the second question, these customizations, do they also exist for different other applications like Rider or VS Studio?
But this is a dev container spec. I haven't tried it, but let me put it another way. Anyone supports the dev container spec, then should support. But yeah, my guess is the answer is probably no, but I haven't tried it.
Okay.
Okay, all good. So the next thing is, well, we can just start using git, initialize git init. For example, I can just do git init, and then it says that, well, we have to use main branch, not master branch. If you do so, then you just say that, well, I want to. Then again, git init. Sometimes you can see an error here. Maybe it's an untrusted folder. Do whatever it says. Yeah, and that will be it. So now we can start with this creating a solution. I like to use command line tools, but you can create a solution from here, or you can create a solution from here. Okay. So that new solution by typing here. Shall I zoom a bit? It's small. Maybe one level. Okay. So it creates a solution file with your parent folder. If you want a different file, you can just say n and then pass the name. Yeah. And another thing I would do is I will just create so we can start with the Paket and fake. So let's just start with Paket and how do you get. So let's just talk about what's Paket. Paket is an alternative to NuGet, and it's a little bit more manual approach. There are tools for which I never worked for me. So you need to. How I use Paket is by editing the text files, which never bothers me. The reason why Paket take off is that unlike NuGet, I mean, at least the earlier editions, NuGet didn't have some sort of locking mechanism till recently. That means, for example, when I was using NuGet, I always ended up with, in my solution, there are different projects. And one project, for example, using Newtonsoft JSON 12.6, and the other one is using 13, something like that. And I always had to catch up this kind of thing. It was it actually, and there was no guarantee that what will happen in the CI/CD environment. It's another question mark. At first, I think NuGet also brought project level lock files, and I heard they also brought recently solution level lock files, but I find it a little bit more complicated. So I feel quite confident with Paket when I start to use it. It's a little bit manual, but everything is under control. That's one of my motivations. So to get started, your naive attempt is that the tool install Paket.
Typo.
Yeah, no, there's no typo. Oh, sorry, there's a typo, but I was already expecting an error. So the problem is, yeah, the problem is once you, so this is .NET Tools, and .NET Tools expect you to, whenever you want to use a tool, you will want to have a manifest. So it just says that, well, you want this command, okay? So the first thing you need to do is you want to run this command. Once you run this command, you will see a config file, and then this thing is coming up. So this is your manifest. Now we can try this again. How this will work. So you can see this file has now Paket 7.2.1. I should tell you, this version is not compatible with .NET 8. So if you want the .NET 8 version, you will want to use, you want to pass a pre-release edition, I suppose, which is something like 8.0 kind of thing. And that will work with .NET 8. Okay. If you're using .NET 6 also, I mean, I think this should work with earlier versions as well. Once we have that, the next thing I do is Paket init. Now this will just create and initialize some initial files here. One of the things it will create a source thing which is duty from NuGet repo. You can also use your own company private repos, as well as use passwords as well, which I'm not going to cover, but it is possible. The storage none is you should leave it as is, which means I would like the NuGet packages to store in the central part. The other alternative is that you may, which in the older ones, is that we were using a NuGet in the we may get the NuGet packages in the current folder as well. For this is a little bit outdated, so I'll just switch this with auto detect. Okay, and that's it. So basically, in next iteration, we are going to write our dependencies. The next thing I'm going to do is I'll create a src folder. This is what I like. Okay, and I'm going to create a new console application in F#, and I'll call it as a server. So notice this O switch is just, it's the output. It means that I'll create a folder with a project. Okay. And yeah, so I just move out here, and I will add this project to my solution. Okay. So we'll just a little bit, let's talk about a bit more Paket. So Paket, I just talk about this file. We haven't done anything. Every project that needs to use Paket must have another file called paket.references. So I'll create a file called packet.references. You might be a bit annoyed why it is so manual. Well, maybe I like torture, but it doesn't bother me. And almost every F# project will have something called F# core. Well, for starters, right? So this is this states that this project is going to use this NuGet dependency. And then I'm just going to copy this, and I'm just going to pass this to here. It's a slight difference. You need to add this prefix here. And the next thing I will do is .NET Paket install. And that's it. Let's build it. Once we do this, we have now our Paket is ready to use. Everything is set up, actually. That's all. So you can see what has changed is we have also another file came up. You can see that there's a log file came up, which is actually something similar to the node level or this node world log file. That's just stating that whenever someone restores this this project or installs anything, then it will just use this log file. Okay. So our project is here, and there's also one little change here. You can see once you do that, it actually automatically added that the Paket install command and modified our project to find this this targets file. So this is automatically added. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do, we can actually commit our changes, but before we commit, we need to have. So if you go here, you will see a lot of files here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a git ignore file, and this git ignore file will have, well, something like this. Basically say that don't include any bin folder, don't include any ops folder, no node modules, anything cache deploy or something like a screenshot. If you want to have this file, you can have it from here. I'll just paste it to chat. Once you do that, you'll see that actually your relevant files, which is part of the commit, just which is going to be part of the commit, is just somewhat less. But we can just commit this like init commit here. And you can even publish it here somewhere if you have already signed in. I mean, it just say that, well, do you want to publish this project or not, which I'm not going to do it because I already published it. Cool. Another tool we need is the Fantomas.
Oh. Apologies, may I ask one question?
Yes.
When you are committing, which of Paket generated files are committed and which are usually ignored?
Yeah, that's a good question. Basically, well, this is not required, but this is required. Okay. The targets file, this one is required. This one is required. Actually, I think, and this one is required as well. So the only thing you don't need is this one. And everything else is required.
Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah. So the next thing I'm going to do is install Fantomas. Fantomas is editor tool so it just aligns the indentation to install Fantomas. And what Fantomas need is you need to have an editor config file to customize. You can look at this documentation in the root level, but I'm only going to use a single implementation of this. So this Strauss, well, I couldn't pronounce it. Straustrup, which is the founder, creator of C++. I think his last name is actually aligned. This is what I like. I like the parentheses to be aligned this way, and when open and closing, they should be on the same vertical line. And this states that the Fantomas should do the alignment like that. We can try it maybe here. Equal to, for example, well, something like that. I'm not sure what's going to happen exactly, but you can just click the format document, and then once you do that, well, for this case, it's too short. But if it's too long, maybe it will do it. There's also a vertical.
I think it works on records.
No, it works for everything.
I think 120 characters is the breaking.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this was this thing. Nope. Maybe I should reload it. This is really not it. Okay, I'll revisit, but this is the basic setup of Fantomas. I think maybe Fantomas, and then let's try that passing it manually. Doesn't matter. Well, it works. Maybe this is the case, but as far as I know, this should have been doing everything. I particularly don't like this thing, and clicking this doesn't do anything for some reason. I just click the second one to get rid of this types, but if you can keep it as you like. Yeah. Another thing you would want is when you create a project is that sometimes some people might open this thing under Windows. So you will want to create a git attributes file here. Okay. And then you will add something like this. What this does is, if someone opens it from Windows side, by default, the Windows and the Linux environment, even if you're in Docker, I mean, once someone checks it out, it becomes a problem on the local file system level. This makes sure that everyone using standard line feed, not carry return line feed statements. Okay. Yeah. So basically, that would be it. Let's say you want to install another package here. What you can do is, well, there are multiple ways. Paket also has as an installer, but what I like is just I like to add things in ToneSoft. I don't know if I can type JSON. Then you add the same thing here. If I type, I hope I typed it correctly. Yeah. So that's how you add a package to your project. You just go here, modify this thing, and modify this thing, and then, yeah. So we'll come. Let's. So this is all about the packet. It's actually. I'll just introduce a little bit how you'll prefer customize. But let's at this point let's jump to Fake itself. The Fake is like a build tool where you can customize the build process by F# coding. There are two. Actually, if you look at the Fake source code, I'm sorry, documentation, you will find it also very confusing how to get started. In particular, starting with .NET 7, the only way to use Fake is to create a project. The FSX approach, it's not working with .NET 7, and that's a documented thing. So what you want and what I do typically is that I create a build project. In this case, new console-lang F#. I'm not passing any argument, so it will create a project called, well, here. Let's add it to the solution. Solution add, sorry, build. Well, I can just do that. And just like the other case, I need to add the packet references here. Okay. The difference is the packet has a different set of dependencies. Which is, well, I have an internet problem. Just a second. So it has a different set of dependencies. What we are going to use is this set of things. So as usual, we need the F# code, just like every F# project. But also, I introduced two other dependencies from F#. Sorry, for the Fake. Notice there's something called group build. What this does is, again, it's something NuGet can't do. You can have a different dependency set, a different group, which Paket will make the version checking only consistent within that group. Okay, it's like an isolated set of dependencies. Once you do that, you go to your well, let me share this file as well if you want to have it. If you don't want the manual type, I just share the link in the chat. You will yeah, you will introduce this thing here as well. So you create the group in the packet dependency as well. You again specify the source as storage, and then the framework auto detect. So you may think that, well, this is the parent group. Why do I have to re-specify the source and storage and other things again? This is actually also a group, but it's an implicit group called group main. Okay, from a packet's perspective, sorry, from a Fake's packet's perspective, this is a by default group called main. Even if you didn't type it, this is how it takes it. So for every group, you need to specify the source, storage, and whatever it takes. Okay, let me share the complete file, if in case you're following it. And then what we do is, again, .NET Packet install. Now this time it just brings a lot of stuff, right? Because it also picked its dependencies. Yeah, you can just see by the way, I'm just sharing the link in case you need the documentation. Here it explains what Packet install does. It says that compute the dependency and download the dependencies as well. There's also the Packet restore. it only downloads the already computed dependency. So that's the primary difference. Okay. So once you have the packet lock file, so you can see that it's already computed now. Okay. Cool. Any questions? So we need to now create our Paket file, sorry, the fake build. For that, let me go step by step. And first of all, let me paste the file link to you. Well, I open several namespaces here of our modules in terms of F# terms. And this is some standard methodology I follow, which perhaps in the following workshops will grow. At the top, I just define some of the paths. So notice this path is it's coming from fake IO path. One of the reasons I use fake is that it actually has some functions or utilities that allows me to build things or play with the files in somewhat a little more abstracted way than that .NET does offer. Okay, it's a little bit more even build oriented. Another thing I'm just going to use is just this. Actually, I include this almost every project on my mind. That, for example, this one checks that. Well, it's something we're going to use this, stating that, well, when I want to invoke a tool from my environment, and I'm going to use this function. Then what are these tools? For example, they could be the node, yarn, or npm, whichever you like. Notice on the left-hand side, you can see the Unix version, which works on macOS and Unix. On the right-hand side, you can see the ones that work on the Windows environment. Okay. And for example, in npm, it's npm.cmd. It's not the or yarn for their CMD files, actually, ironically. In addition, I have another helper function. So there's a set of helper functions here. I'm going to keep on running these things. So this is basically when I start a project, I'll just almost copy paste all of these things. It's a run tool which runs an external process. And then we need something like this, run.net. This is again a Paket fake command where it just says .NET execute. Execute a .NET command under working directory. And we're going to also use this. So these are where I'm setting up these are some sort of helper functions, and I'm setting them up actually right now. So the most important point is the entry point, just like every function. So as I told you earlier, fake is something that is meant to run as an F# script file, but that's not working with something with .NET 7 or 8 at this point. So to circumvent that problem, the developers of fake has just converted it to something else. And basically, don't ask me why, but you just use this piece of code. It somehow emulates as if there's an FSX file. Okay. And this basically just sets an execution context. We have a missing function which will define the targets, and then this actually basically define the default target. Okay. Now we need a function where we need to define the targets. And defining a target is something. Let's discuss what's a target. A target is something like whenever you say you want to execute that target, fake will run that target's code as well as its dependencies. So our initial targets function will look like this. By default, for example, we have defined a target with name is clean. And what it does is, for example, you can pass here any folder. I don't know, for example, your server folder, perhaps, well, which is not recommended because you don't want to delete your source code. But if you have in the future, we'll have a deploy folder here, something like that. We want to clean this up. And this basically, with shell clean, it just cleans that folder. Okay. But if you can just use anything here. And the next target we are going to create is the run server. So what run server does is it actually, as you can see, we are using this run.net thing. It just runs the .NET command, and we are passing these parameters. So we want to run, for example, in our case, in the server in a watch mode, and then it will actually run the server mode within the server path. Once this is done, we can also define dependencies. We can say clean. There's a funny operator here, run server. This basically says that whenever you need to run the run server, you first need to run the clean thing before that. Okay, if you need that. Now, this is actually, I talked about the fake, but this is actually the most important point of fake. Why would I bother with all this trouble? So I'll just try to answer this question by showing a single screenshot, if I can. So this is a screenshot from fake documentation. Unfortunately, it's reserved in fake 5.0. You won't see this screenshot in fake 6 documentation for whatever reason. You can see the dependency tree. So we have a task 1, and we have a task A2 and task B2, which task A2 and task B2 have a dependency to task 1. And task 3 have dependencies to other task 1, and task 3 have a dependency to task C2, task A2, and other things. And task 4 and task A4 and task B4 has a dependency to task 3. Fake has an ability to find out the independent. It's like a topological sorting algorithm. Find out independent parts, which in this case you see that it figured out the orange part, the green part and the blue part. They don't have direct dependencies. So it figures out that actually you can parallelize this code, and you can have a much faster build. And it's very important in CI/CD environment. Actually, sometimes people have like hours of build times. Okay, and by using fake, it can discover your dependency tree, and it has the you need to pass a switch for parallelizing it. But once you do that, it will actually run them in parallel. Let's see if I can find it out. Yeah, you can see this dash parallel 8 states that, well, I have 8 threads and then run my thing in 8 threads. So this is some option you can pass to fake. Okay. So this is the main motivation. Why should I use fake? This is the main motivation. It can actually find out your dependencies. It also has something concepts like a soft dependency. Well, it says that, well, if I need to run B, it actually talks about it just to say, with soft dependency say that running B will not require A to be run first. Pakehowever, if A is going to run, it must run before B. So these kind of things, you cannot do with other, as far as I know. Maybe Paket can do it as well, which is start after fake. But it's pretty hard to do these kind of things with regular build tools. Okay. Any questions? Yeah, we're a little bit running out of time, so I'll just accelerate. So how we are going to run this thing? What I do is I create another file called fake.sh. Okay. And then I add this thing into this code. And I share the code. Once you do that, you need to, because we are on the Unix environment, you need to do chmod 755, and then you need to give this thing and a relevant permission for executing in Unix environment. And let's just build everything out just to see if we don't have any errors so far. Yeah. Now what you can do is you can just execute this shell command directly, and it will execute the default target, right? And the default target was, if you remember, the run server. Okay, so it run first clean and then it run the server. Alternatively, you can pass a target like clean. If you only want to run a single target, so you can pass the maybe something like that. Yeah, sorry. You don't need to pass the -t switch because it's already included. So you see, so you pass the name, it will only run that target as well. Okay. Another, and probably one of the last things, is that you will also want something like a post create command file. Let me talk about it. Oh, sorry. So whenever my Dockerized environment runs, for example, a fellow developer has run this thing, I would like things to be set up for this person, right? For my fellow developers. So what I do is I create a post create command.sh, some arbitrary name. This name isn't special. And again, I give this 755 to here. Oh, sorry. I first need to do this. Okay. And here I'll just paste another command, which I just need to, I only need, well, perhaps these two here. So this is something like something like whenever we need something to execute, whenever the container is created, we can just use this thing. Okay, so whatever you put here, well, I can also include this one, build. These are command out, so we don't need these things at this point. And that will be it. So let me just paste it if you need the link. And another last thing is just we need to go and our dev container file, and there is something called here post create command. So here, and I'll just so this is actually a file, something that needs to run whenever you recreate your container. Okay, so once I change that, it asks me to rebuild the container. So let's just do that. Okay, I made a typo, or it should be like a, yeah, thank you. And that's, oh, my bad. So I should just go, this should be the first, why I got confused. The first thing you need to do is that you need to tool install and packet install, and this one, I was confused. Let's just try this once more. You need to view command, rebuild container. Yeah, that's true. I missed it, sorry. I was confused. So you can see if your colleague checks out this, opens this folder, and inside the container, it will work fine. So you can see this error. Don't worry about it. It's a race condition, and I just sometimes install it too early itself. Just reload this thing, and then everything will be fine. And that's pretty much it, actually. So this is how you get started. Just as a recap, we talked about the dev container file. which we customized it. We install these tools. We learn how to configure the ports. And another reason why we'd use the dev container is that if you're using Mac, for example, things like HTTP wasn't working until .NET 7 in Mac environment. I think they fixed it in .NET 8, but that was one of those reasons. If you want to test HTTP2 under macOS with something with .NET 7, you must use a Dockerized environment. There's no other way. We created our first project. We just installed .NET tools, and we used the Paket dependencies. We used the Paket references and then installed the dependencies. We created our build project. We defined our targets, as well as well, that would be it. Yeah, that's all I'm going to share. Thank you for listening. Any questions you want to ask?
Just a short one. How do you run projects? Is it .NET Run, or do you have some special secret there?
Well, what I do is, for example, right now I have one console project, right? How do I run it? Is just I just run this one, fake.sh, and it will run the default target. How does this work? If you look at the fake.sh, it actually runs this our build project with the relevant target if there is any target. Okay. In this case, I didn't specify any target. So let's look at our build project. We have specified the default target as run server. And what does run server does is it runs the .NET with watch run and with the server path. And that's it.
Thank you.
Anything else?
How do you set up like databases?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what I do is I use a migration tool. In particular, I mean, that could be part of your application. If you're curious, I can show you a code sample perhaps, but the built-in one, as you would know, the entity frameworks migrations won't work with F# at all. So I use something called migrator.net, a different migration. And basically it's not part of, well, technically it is certainly possible. You can integrate this with fake as well. You can, for example, one alternative, you can create another console project that's only duty is to create your database via a migrator tool or execute some arbitrary SQL commands. And then you can, for example, create a target that would run that migrator console application and add as a dependency to here beforehand, for example, something like that.
And would the database run its own Docker container in development mode?
Well, that's a different question. So there's a debate on database. Should you run databases under Docker container or not? It really depends. So one thing, for example, you can have a database server in your development environment that's running somewhere else. Probably most teams will have this kind of setup, right? But sometimes you can have a dedicated container environment in your own machine. Then it doesn't matter. You would just connect to that as if it's a remote server. Now, as far as I understand, you want to have that database thing perhaps inside this, integrated with this dev container JSON. For that, you need to read the documentation here, read using, for example, how would you use a Docker Compose file? A Docker Compose file is something like it actually involves multiple Docker files and then shows you how would you run this thing and the database server and as well, other thing as well.
Yeah.
And it actually pointed here, since you can see that you point your Docker Compose file. And I mean, that in that case, you need a little bit more sophisticated setup.
Yep. Cool. Did you have issues with fonts? Because for me, it looks a little bit weird in this thing. Like,
Yeah. Not an issue, but it's a, for example, well, it's a Fire, what is it called? It's a Fire font. There's a different font, which is I can't recall the name. Fira, maybe.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit more F# friendly, but maybe not friendly for you.
No, it's fine. But for me, it's like consolas or something, and I'm on Windows, and it has some weird things. Like, for example, the fun keyword in a lambda is actually a lambda symbol, and some others are just totally wrong, and somewhere is an I is has some weird characters. So it's like.
So this is actually this one. You see that? Actually, this one. So the Fira code. Well, I can maybe try to turn it off.
These are called ligatures. I think it's Fira mono. There's lots of fonts that support ligatures. If you just Google.
That's true. File preferences. I started out the font somewhere. I'm so clumsy. Where do I have the settings? But specific to VS Code and specific to my environment, I can say.
I have to do both. Thanks a lot. Very useful.
Yeah, thank you. That's all, actually. There is nothing else I want to share. Unless if you have questions, I'll stick. Otherwise, feel free to leave. There will be another session next week. This is specific to giraffe. Yeah, there was another question. I don't know. You can ask the Google if their containers work with Visual Studio. Probably yes, I would say. This is a Microsoft thing. But I don't know. I haven't used Visual Studio for a very long time, something like 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was very, very useful.
Yeah, awesome.
Learned a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, the repo is there. I shared the links multiple times. You can just use it as a reference. And then see you till next week if you join for the draft. So we'll just come up with something a little more useful. We'll build some simple pages. Okay, thank you for your time and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sonny.
Bye.
Thank you and bye.